CX and technology are worlds that are colliding. What AI can't do, and what happens when you don't know what's happening upstream. We're going to talk about this and so much more today with our friend from down under, Luke Jamieson. Luke, let's get into it.
G'day, Rocky. Let's go.
I've really been looking forward to this conversation. I know uh, across the pond down south, it's a little earlier in the day. Over here, it's a little later, and I've been looking forward to this all day. And we're recording this day. Luke, what day is it?
Right now it's Wednesday. Yep.
Do you know what yesterday was in the States? What official day?
Uh,
CX. It's CX
CX
day.
Day?
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect
Yeah.
timing. Like I didn't know if you knew that or not, being in this, not in the States. And
Yeah,
it's
we,
just
we we had it 2 days ago. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, the time zone just throws me off every time I talk. Like, oh, it was today's Wednesday, but technically it's still
That's right.
Tuesday for us. I love it. I love that we can use technology to talk to people across the world about meaningful
I know.
things.
Well,
So
I'll be in the States very shortly. And when I leave here, I leave at like 10 a.m. And then I arrive in the States on the same day at 11 a.m. So it's a super quick flight. I don't know what
So
everyone's
you're
on about.
actually traveling back in time. Like I'm gonna call you Marty McFly. You're not Luke Jameson anymore. So
Exactly.
Luke,
It's wild.
our audience, right, for Bites and Banter, most of our audience are going to be IT leaders, people in the ITSM service management profession, and there are a ton of overlaps in the CX space in terms of what we do. But for those who maybe haven't heard of Luke Jameson, don't know your journey, what is your background? Like, how did you land in this role of CX evangelist? Like, walk us through that a little bit.
Look, I won't give you that. I won't go back to when I was a child. But look, I've been in the contact center space for 25 years and I've gone full circle. So started on the phones, did the team leader thing, then the management thing, then the executive thing. And then I went into the consulting side of it. And then the consulting side led me to the tech side. And so I've been then on the tech side probably for the last, getting to about 8 years now, 8, 9 years.
So,
And so I've been like retail, BPOs, direct.
yeah.
So the full gamut of the contact center.
No, I love that. I love that you have such a wide variety of background, and I don't know for our audience if they realize this, but like you have just a unique background. Like you kind of fell into this whole like contact center thing, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
but you didn't finish high school, right? You were doing some, you
correct.
know, I would call it similar to nonprofit, right? Building schools and churches and driving cattle, as we talked. Like how
Yeah.
did you land in contact center in this support world that we live in?
Well, I was a baker pastry chef. So,
Yep.
and then as you said, I went and traveled the world and did the, you know, building schools and all that sort of stuff. And it was sort of a wild thing. I also then got into graphic design and was doing that for a while. And then that moved me to a different state, moved me to Melbourne. And at the time, moving from to another state, I was like, I'll just get another graphic design, arty kind of job, which I was really enjoying. Turns out it's really hard to do when you haven't got any qualifications. And so I was like, oh, I'll just take this stepping stone role in a contact center. And I stayed. I stayed for 25 years, moved to like this, and then moved into the CX space. But I loved it. I saw almost the second I got in there, I realized like, these are my people. Really enjoyed just serving customers. I also really enjoyed the challenge that I saw ahead of me of this industry that was just doing things so backwards and
Mm.
trying to optimize humans and really shoving people into this narrow way of doing things, narrow way of leading. And I really thought there's such an opportunity to flip all of this on its head and just revolutionize it. And that really excited me. And I just kind of always had that since I took that first phone call. I always thought I could really shift. I could change something in this space. I think we can do it better. And that's always just driven me.
I think the cool thing about contact center, and And I almost hate using the term contact center because it's kind of looked down on, right? In the wider
Yeah.
industry, unless you're in it. Because the
Mm,
reality is, whether you're in IT, you're in sales, you're in, customer service, you're every one of these type of roles has a contact center somewhere, right? And we're
hmm.
all aiming to do the same thing, and that's create better outcomes, right? Create better
Spot
outcomes.
on.
And uh, IT and success with IT, it's all about driving improvement and better outcomes, right? And customer
Hmm.
experience. You can't create a customer experience outcome that's successful without the technology that happens behind it. So these
Exactly.
worlds really are colliding in a really cool way right now. And I love it. I
Spot on.
love it.
And that's been my big thing probably in the last 12 months is really seeing that collision and working in that collision space. And it's awesome. I'm really enjoying this whole new learning and different side of it. And Matt Barron, I think, said it best that there's a CX adjacency. And and I'm not sure it is CX adjacent. I actually think it is just, yeah, as you said, it's like they're so integrated and
Yeah.
supported. Yeah.
And Matt Barron's a very well known commodity in this service management space. So I love the name drop, even though I know that you weren't intentionally doing that. Like it just
No.
shows you, well, it shows you how real the collision is, right? You got
Mm,
Erica, which I know you're familiar with Informer, right? Who's doing
hmm.
ICMI and contact center and HDI and Enterprise Connect. Like you can't split the outcomes of a customer experience and how we serve our customers from the technology we're using and the support we're providing,
Exactly.
right? You can't.
Yeah.
When we talked a little bit, you brought up this point of just really the CX space and this idea of technology and AI and support, and you talked a little bit about the complexity and the things you're seeing. Walk me through that a little bit.
When any vendor talks about what they're trying to do, it's we're going to make this simpler, faster, better. And in a way, they do, no doubt about it. But at the same time, we're just adding layers and layers of complexity. The more channels we have, more complexity. The more data we have, the more complexity. And when we think about AI and then what's coming with that, and I don't want to talk forever about AI. There's enough of
Thank
that
you.
out there. But when you think about the things that it solves, what it could do, what parts of customer service it takes over, taking over something doesn't reduce complexity, it adds more complexity. You then have one more thing you have to manage and look after. And when something shifts from AI to human or human to AI, how's that handoff looking? And is it smooth? Is it working? Is the customer experience, is it delivering on what we said it would? That's all just added complexity. And we're seeing that, I think, at like 20-fold now, when we start to
Mm.
see, and when we look at like the different eras, if we go back and you look at like the industrial era, and then the .com era, and then the customer service era, the employee era, every time it just gets shorter and shorter and shorter before it moves to the next one. And we have moved into that AI era, and it's just going at such pace and change. And I think that just brings immense complexity as we try to keep up.
Music to my ears. I just wrote an article for HDI, I think last month, about just the promises of AI that vendors aren't necessarily showing. Like they're showing capability and not the value, right, for your
Mm,
problem. And as you talk to me a little about even what you guys are doing at Operata, like in my head I'm thinking, man, IT has so much value that we could use for better tools that do the kind of things you guys are doing. Can you walk me
mm,
through, like, what are you guys doing? Like, what is Operata? Obviously there's a lot that probably goes into it, and it obviously you don't, not ask you to sell it, but I would love for you to talk about it because I think it's such a cool platform. It's such a cool capability for what you guys are doing.
yeah, me too. And before we get there, like how I came across Operata was really
Yeah.
interesting, because I was off again doing my own thing. I was doing some research in around this idea of CX observability. And, where observability I first came across the term was when I did a shift from on-prem to cloud with Amazon Connect. And I learned all of these new terms about like MOS values and, all the jitter, the lag, all these things that sort of come with moving to cloud and the complexity that comes with going to cloud. Sure, you get great scale, but there is complexity. But I thought, and I'd learned about observability tools that monitor your stack to make sure everything's working okay. And I thought, how cool would that be if you could have that at a customer experience level? And we talk about, customer journey maps, and, historically they've been pretty static in the sense that you've got all these post-it notes, they end up on a wall somewhere, you map the journey. And I was like, if we could bring observability into that space, you get these living, breathing journey maps. So I started doing research around that and considering that. And then, funny enough, I got introduced to this company, Operator, who was also in Melbourne. And so I went and interviewed the founders of Operator purely from a research perspective.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, man, this is actually really awesome. And we decided to get together. And so, yeah, I'm on board with Operator. And to talk about what we do, what is CX observability? It's observability for the contact center. So it's going really deep on that customer experience layer and being able to see, if we think about all the different things that happen in contact centers, you've got analytics platforms, you've got your CCaaS platform that has, lots of data in it. You've got AI platforms, and all these platforms that are kind of sitting in these silos that are actually really good and really useful, but all that data is so siloed out. The Operator CX Observability platform does is it brings all of that together and allows you to see the full landscape from the customer to the agent to the stack and where all of that is connecting together and where your upstream impacts are happening. And that's the thing that I never realized. All of these upstream impacts that as a contact center leader, you're probably not thinking about too often. So you're not thinking about, jitter and how that's affecting the transcription of your call, or whether the customer can hear you clearly, or whether your microphone isn't positioned correctly and is off with another device. And you're not thinking about the impact that that's having on a customer. And there was all this research done, right, with two universities, ANU, an Australian university, and also University of California. And the research around what poor audio does to trust. And what they found is that when you've got poor audio, your trust drops significantly. And yet there's all these upstream impacts in cloud contact centers that we don't consider. Anyway, we did this research on like 148,000 calls with a service desk ticket attached, and 54% of them were audio related issues. And that's when I was like, wow, that's a real issue. And that's not something, as someone who's run contact centers, cloud-based contact centers, never really considered that impact. And that's where these two worlds between IT, CX, customer experience, customer service, all kind of start smashing together. Yeah. And so this idea is of observability at that CX level, really, clearly it gets me excited because it's being able to actually make a difference. And so many of those, so many platforms, mate, so many things that we see and you're like, does it really make an impact? But to be able to say, you know what, maybe 54% of your calls, if we could fix some of that, that's genuine impact. And that's always something I've been really keen on, is whatever I do actually can shift the dial and make an impact to customers, to agents, and to overall customer experience.
I love that. I mean, are you familiar with XLAs at all, Luke? Just the concept of XLAs. So, and it's something I vocalized in the CX Accelerator, like CX Day. I was virtually on there, and I was just hearing, I think it was Matt Lyles and Nate and some other folks just talking about these different things. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, XLAs have such a home in the CX space. And this idea of just contact center and customer service, customer experience space, because it's literally creating a measurement around the desired ambition right? For the experience you
Mm,
want for your customer. Now in IT, it's easy to do that, right? We want them to have what experience with onboarding and their technology, et cetera. But there's operational data underneath it, right? That's fueling into that sentiment question. And then you have
mm,
technical data. And I hear you talk about Operata. I tell you, you're talking about this, right? This observability and I'm thinking, man, how could you use that technical data to really inform the experience, right? And to really look at the ambition you want to create for your customers, right? What are the things you're
mm.
missing? The needle in the haystack. You know, how many
That's exactly right.
uh,
It's
like
it's it's like being able to navigate by the stars, right? There's all these
right.
indicators out there, and being how do you take those and align those? And look, that's exactly what we do. We take technical, operational, and experience data, those three streams, and bring those together to give you actionable insights. So that's the elevator pitch.
You and I need to sit down and have a conversation, or I need to connect you. Do you know Rayanne Bruno by chance, or Alan Nance? He's a
Yes.
Brit.
Yep.
Alan, you and Alan need to sit down and have a conversation about, hey, this XLA idea, right? Because man, I hear you talking. I'm like, we need this data to fuel the experience management, experience monitoring, the levels, the ambition that we have for our customers. And it gets me all fired up because for so long, so many things in service management have just been, oh, it's technology, it's IT, but it's so wrong. It's so far from the truth, right? It's
Yeah.
customer experience is more than just technology, and technology, they go hand in hand. And so I'm just getting these goosebumps thinking about all the possibilities these worlds really collide.
The best analogy I ever came across was I came up with was
Yeah.
was this idea. Maybe it's a bit crass, but if you think about if you were out in the wild and you're a beautiful stream and you're like, I'm just going to have a drink of this water, and right in front of you that water looks crystal clear, and you're like, what could possibly go wrong? But just up around the corner, just out of sight, there is a deer doing its business in the water, and you don't know what those upstream impacts are going to have happen on you. And to be able to see that impact and be able to foresee that, that's super powerful. Not just for your tech stack, but
Yeah.
for the agents who are using it and the customers who are the benefactors of that.
I think about drinking this beautiful stream of water. Like maybe like me and my wife went to Colorado before we had our first daughter, and we hiked up this mountain. And there's lakes in the mountain. I didn't know that was a thing, right? You go up to the mountain, there's like these giant lakes. But imagine
Yeah.
like sitting there with the serene, and all of a sudden a piranha jumps up and bites you, right? Like just gnaws out your face, like, and you didn't see it coming. But what if you
Hmm.
did, right? What if you knew
Exactly.
that it was coming, and what could you do differently? And I love that analogy of just upstream. That's super cool. So you've been right this CX evangelist for Operato. You've seen this data that's happening. You before that you were kind of doing your own thing, right? And you were
Hmm.
doing research. You were looking at the industry. What are the things that you're seeing that you're like, man, this is really coming to fruition, or maybe we're not getting this right? I think you said something on the last episode of 2020ish, which I'm going to ask you about in general, but that really stuck with me. And it's where you think we're going. And I would love for you to flesh that out a little bit if you remember what you said, or it's probably the way you feel anyway. So you'll probably share it.
I think that as far as like just where we're going as an industry, is that what that you're referring to?
So where we're going as an industry, I think is fair. You talked a little bit about the trends that maybe people around voice and around some other things that I think when I heard you
Oh,
say it, I just
yeah.
I was
Sorry. Yeah,
clapping.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
clapping like, please, everybody needs to hear this.
Yeah, look, I think voice is back, right? And because we're desperate for human connection, and where all of your other things fail, where your
Yeah.
chatbot fails, where your voice AI fails, your humans can't, and we need to be able to support that. And people, like I was talking about before about trust, there is so much trust that's built with a human to human connection. And I actually think that the voice is back, but it's going to become the white glove service, right? So
Hmm.
sure, there is going to be so many things that take away some of that lower friction work, or more process driven work and task driven work, and that's good to a certain degree. It's good in the sense that it frees humans up to be really thinking and using their brain power and having a purpose and impact on what they do. It also does add a lot of cognitive load as well, and I think the complexity of humans is just going to require us to have that human connection. So when that white glove service is there, you want it to be really good. And so I think the voice channel is 100% still going to be around, and if not the strongest, most reliable channel going forward. Because once, I don't know, AI it's good. It gets better every single day, but there is still you can't beat that desire to speak to another person and make a connection.
No, you can't. And I have no, and normally I don't lead the horse to water, if you will, but I have no shame about pulling that out, because when you said it, I'm like, I want our HCI folks to hear that, because the ITSM space and the service desk space, this IT support world, I think for so long, like when I started a decade ago, it's been like 10 years and like 2 months. And I accidentally fell into a job because I knew somebody who was looking, and, he's like, "Hey, you interested?" And I said, "I know nothing about computers." And long story short, he's like, "Do you Google your own problem?" I said, "Yeah." And the rest is history, right? But day one, it was very clear to me that, oh, we're gonna move to this whole AI. Or it wasn't technically called AI at the time, but it's chatbot, right? Chatbots were a new thing and the new
Mm,
buzz, and there was this really bubbling fear, and it was an MSP, so there was 400 or 500 of us in this building, right? And there was this bubbling fear that when we roll this chatbot out, like, oh, people aren't going to need us, or our jobs are
mm,
going to go away. And
mm.
that was a decade ago. And you know
Yeah.
what? People are still calling. And that was prescriptive. You had to have a
Mm,
human say, this is the context they're going to give you, and this is the response if these keywords are used, right? It wasn't even generative. And so
mm,
I see such a big overlap in just the CX world and in the IT world, and this idea that, just like you said, human connection is so critical, and people want that so deeply. And I think
mm,
some people don't even realize, like, why is it so hard for them to use the chat instead of pick up the phone? Well, it's because at
mm,
a subconscious level, they want to talk to another human, right?
mm.
They want that
100%.
connection and support. CX people who are, Luke is a very well-known commodity. I'm not saying that Luke said it. Your job, answering the phones and supporting the people that you're trying to, provide that brand promise to, is not going anywhere.
It's
Not
not.
going anywhere.
In fact, AI might be the best thing for that,
Yeah.
because if you're really good at your job and that becomes the white glove service, no longer is that the step in the door, foot in the door. That is like the highly valued role, and
Right.
we want to pay people accordingly for that role. So it could actually mean that we see an industry rise benchmark in
Mm.
those service roles. And whether the bill goes through in America or not, but the bill around bringing a lot of those jobs on shore and working and
Yeah.
all of those sort of things. I think that's one of those moments where it's like it's the underlying principle. I think of part of that bill is getting the service that we all want.
Yeah.
Whether it's and so we want that better service. We want that white glove experience. We want to have those moments. And so we're trying, there's people taking different angles and different approaches to try and get us there. I think that things like AI are going to be good for that. It makes it a challenging white glove role that you can feel you can have impact and add meaning to. I think that's what we all want, right? We
Yeah.
want to get up in the morning, have meaning, have impact, have purpose, have that aligned to our personal goals, aligned with our work goals and what we do.
I think if we spent as much time talking about how we can better serve people in
Mm,
meaningful ways as we do talking about I think the world we live in would be very different in CX and IT support.
mm,
Eh, like,
100%. Yeah, 100%.
um, what would so you know, you have a lot of experience, a lot of background, right? Just CX space. What would surprise people, like as you're digging in the data, right? Because I think as much as AI is great, I think honestly, meaningful insight provided to people who can make decisions and change
Mhm.
things in meaningful ways for not only the business, right, but also for those people supporting the business is so much more valuable than AI. So as you
Yeah.
guys are seeing the data, right? Your voice is here to stay. What are the things that are really like, oh, I wouldn't have known this without this insight. Like if I didn't see this, I would have
Yeah.
had no idea. Like what are those things
Yeah.
that you're seeing?
Really cool one, which is this idea of the 10 by 10 rule. I don't know if
Hmm,
you've heard of this,
I
but
have not.
where 10% of your agents display 10 times the number of behaviors or experience something 10 times greater than everybody else. Now, if you think back to the Jack Welch days, what an amazing leader, written so many books, GE, all that sort of stuff. So many people looked to him for leadership. But he had one rule, which was this 70-20-10 rule, which was 20% of your top performers, 70% mid, A, B, and then your C players, 10%, bottom 10%, and you just fire them.
The bell curve.
Yeah. I believe, having seen this 10 by 10 rule in play and seeing it come through the data, that is so flawed, because when I start to see some of these behaviors that take place, people who were great agents all of a sudden waiting for the very last second to pick up the call on their
Mm,
ring time, increased hold times, hanging up on people while they're on mute, all these tricks or things that agents
yeah.
might do, which is often deemed as bad behavior. So you're like, oh, that's just poor behavior. Let's get rid of
Yeah.
them. But
Abandoning
when you start
calls,
to,
avoiding work, all
yeah,
that jazz. Yeah.
exactly right. When you start to look at some of this data, they're also the agents who have got the highest CPU. They're also the agents who have got the worst MOS. So MOS value is the clarity of audio for listeners who don't
Mm,
know what it is. So how clear audio is. They also have the worst audio out of everybody. And what was really interesting is agents who had poor MOS were 50% more likely to leave in the next 3 months. And when you start to dig into this data, the more I've dug into this data around you know, PC performance, MOS values, hold time, and all these behaviors that you sort of see, 10%, that 10% of your agents are burning out. We were part of a study this year for the contact center best practice, which we surveyed like 2,500 agents and about 500 contact center leaders, and the results were pretty damning. That 15% of agents were leaving due to burnout. So burnout's a real issue, but when
yeah.
you start to and that translates both across Australia and the US. So when you look at US data,
Yeah.
it's very similar. Industry faces around 30% attrition, and it has for the last 6 years on record
Mm,
been around that 30% mark. And what that costs our industry is just phenomenal. The average rehiring cost
yeah.
is around $15,000, right? You start multiplying that out across
Man.
even 10% of your agents, it's massive. The thing is, a lot of these agents are actually burning out due to upstream impacts on their technology that's prohibiting them for doing their job the best that they possibly can. And that adds stress, and that stress leads them to leave their jobs. So
Mm,
if someone was to now tell me that IT and employee engagement and well-being aren't connected, I'd flat out tell them they're lying, because it's a huge piece. And we see that data. We see that data
yeah.
every day with this 10 by 10 rule. It's amazing.
You know, I'm just thinking about ICMI and HCI were very closely, for those who are listening, ICMI is the contact center arm of Informa, which owns HDI. And so, there's a lot of crossover in general with the people and those kind of things for people who aren't familiar with our audience. So I did a breakout at HDI Support World Live last year, and it's on servant leadership and framework around that. But really, what really sticks out to me as you're talking is all of the surveys, all of the employee engagement surveys, and this is looking kind of holistically at just the U.S. and in general. but employee engagement is at like a decade low. Like
Mm,
like it's been like 10 years since we've been this, not even during COVID, were we this
mm,
disengaged at work. And in my head, I'm like, ah, well, how many people are having these problems and suffering in silence, right?
hmm.
That don't even realize they're having
And
problems. And
and that's
like,
what this data does. This data
yeah,
is the voice for agents who can't say it, who feel like they don't have a
yeah.
voice. The data is there telling us this, which is amazing.
Now, I wish every IT service desk that has more than 4 to 6 people, right? You have a lot of people who can't raise their hands, say have technology issues, had
Mm,
this kind of insight, because I came from it before I was in the role I'm in now. My day job, I was an MSP, right? We had
hmm
2,000 service desk agents, something like that globally. And this kind of insight to their PC performance on top of their audio performance, on top of, all of these downstream trickles, I wonder what kind of insight that would have given us to the people who were serving our
mm,
customers when I was in that world.
mm.
And it just, man, it's meaningful data that allows you to make meaningful decisions that enable your agents to make meaningful impact on the customers they're trying to serve. And
Couldn't have said
spend
that better.
spend a lot less money on, man, rehiring and finding somebody and retraining them, and because that's not easy. That's not easy for
Yeah.
organizations at all, at all.
Yeah, not at all. No. So it's yeah. So for me, that's been a huge eye opener, and learning a lot of this what would be network
Yeah,
speak, network ops, and all of that sort of stuff. And it's been really exciting for me to learn that side of the business as well, and understand that in much greater value than simply saying, "Oh, Moz is just the quality of our score." Like, what does that actually
yeah,
mean? Like, what impacts that, and then what does that have
right.
an impact on the customer and the sentiment and your agents? It's fascinating.
I'm telling you, XLAs, man, they're gonna rear their head in the CX space sometime in the near future. Because as you're talking, that's what XLAs are about. It's knowing that answer. Because when you get the sentiment, even you think about agents, right? Asking
hmm
agents on a regular basis, in some cadence, what their do you have, like, rate your experience with your contact center platform, right? You have that overall
mm
sentiment, if you will, but underneath that you have this operator data and this SLA KPI data and their AHT data, right? And all these different whatever you want to measure that points to that are the underlying cause when you see that number go down. And I'm like,
exactly.
knowing that XLAs are coming to CX, it's just a matter of when.
I've written it down, Rocky. It's on.
I'm gonna keep saying it, until it happens. Let me ask you this question. I would be
hmm
remiss if I didn't bring up 2020ish, right, with Luke Jamieson, and I know you didn't necessarily start it on your own, but I would love for you to share a little bit about 2020ish. Like, what is 2020ish? What are you guys trying to achieve? How did it start? And we will definitely link it when we post this because people need to see this content, even if it's the first 25 seconds for amusement if they're having a bad day.
Yeah, thanks, mate. 2020ish came about with Michael Matson, who is a fantastic connector. Like, he just connects with people in a really authentic way. He reached out to me, wanted to connect, but actually had the conversation. And I was like, yeah, let's get on a call. I'm always keen to collaborate. Like, my big thing for this year was collaborate more with people. And we wrote this article. So this was last year, 2024. We wrote this article on digital twins. And we put a lot of research and a lot of time and effort into it, and we got it published, and we were really proud of it. And I think about 3 people read it, and we were like, man, there's got to be a better way. And we started talking and spitballing about, like, what content do we not see and we want to see. And so we're like, let's create some short form content that's really engaging and fun. Maybe we could just ask some leaders 20 questions. We'll play a game of 20 questions. That was the like minimum viable product.
Yeah.
And we put it out there. We just jumped on LinkedIn. We're like, reach out to our connections. Hey, you wanna be part of this show that we're thinking about? And like, everyone said yes. I'm like, oh, we better do something about it.
Uh,
And it's really
uh-oh.
interesting when you watch season one. Yeah, when you watch season one, and it's pretty low production value, I think, season one. And you know, we were skiving off from our work, or doing like really early mornings and really late evenings to try and make this work, because we're in different countries. And if you watch all of season one, you'll see the relationship between Michael and I just grow from this sort of awkwardness to being really good mates. By the end of season one, which kind of got a little bit crazier as it went along, and as we became more comfortable with each other, we then all of a sudden had like 30 people saying, "Yeah, we want to do season 2 with you." And so we're like, "Wow, okay, cool, let's do it." And so people started to say, "Oh, so how do we see the rest of the episodes?" And Michael and I were like, "Oh, just go hashtag 2020ish on LinkedIn and you'll find it." And you probably won't.
Our pod
So we
guy,
decided, well,
our production guy is he's like crawling in his skin right now hearing you say that. I have no doubt.
yeah,
Starts the
it's just
hashtag.
it's just been such an organic growth. And so, this year we put a lot more production value into it, more time, and thinking about the questions, and we had a lot more fun with it. We created a YouTube account, we created a website, so we put our big boy pants on and really got going with it. So we're really proud of season 2. We had a lot of fun. The whole idea of it, though, the premise, the underlying premise of 2020ish was, let's create engaging, different content that people haven't seen before, that gives back to the community, both, and we do that in 2 ways. We have CX leaders who come on the show, and we want to highlight them and showcase them so that more people go and use their services, or lean on them and get introduced to CX leaders who can really make a difference. And then also give those CX leaders a new audience as well. So that was how we give back to the CX community. And so really it's a passion project that Michael and I just love. We've got season 3 all lined up, ready to go. We already have enough guests for season 4.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we've got some pretty wild intros coming for season 3, maybe even more wild than season 2.
So maybe you can send us some B-roll, but you could also send us some like of your favorite, like you and Michael side by side. like like
Exactly.
we just have to throw some of those up in the middle of this episode
Yeah,
because
you've got a
people
sizzle
have
reel
to see
coming your
it.
way.
I think
Yeah.
if you see the one, I think probably my favorite was either just the straight up like criminals, like you guys are like, or the old men, like just those. I'm like, what am I getting into right now? So good.
Yeah.
So good.
That's what, and that's the idea. And some guests get into it, like Sarah Caminiti, she really steered into
She
it and
does.
got pretty
She
got
was
pretty loose,
actually a host of
which
the
was
last
awesome.
episode. If you haven't,
Yeah.
watch the
We flipped the script on
Stranger
that.
Things version of yeah.
And that was the beauty of it. Like Sarah
Yeah.
Caminiti, for example, like I just love what she does. And I never would have heard of her had it
Yeah.
not been for 2020ish, because every season we do an episode where we get CX leaders to promote someone who's up and coming, who
Yeah.
who they think is that everyone needs to hear about. And Vicky Brackett said Sarah Caminiti. We connected. She was thrilled to be named by Vicky, and then she was on season 2.
Yeah.
And so it's been a joy, and I
And she
can't
has
wait
a
to meet
podcast
her
she
when
just launched too, right?
she did, and it's
Uh,
epic.
Erica actually introduced me. She connected us via comments, I think, on maybe it was a 2020-ish episode comment or something. I think she linked us. She's like, hey, you guys need to meet. And so she's on my list of like, I need to reach out to her and see if she'd be willing to come on and talk about the things that she's doing. Cause yeah, that's a
Yeah,
name without 2020-ish. I would have never known. Like
there you go. See,
it's
and
just,
this is the beauty of it. So that's what we
yeah,
want. What do we want for it? We want it to continue to be entertaining.
yeah.
We've had over 300,000 views, and we want to just see more of that. So, yeah,
And maybe Bites and Banter will catch up to you someday. Someday.
yeah,
Knock on
or
wood.
maybe a certain Bites and Banter host
I
is going to
mean,
be on it. So,
you
I mean,
know, I don't know. Daniel's gonna love that. um, so Luke, before I ask you our wrap up question, I what it was there what do you want to share with the audience, right? Like that you think you're in the CX space, you understand the tech, you're getting more into the weeds of the technology, right? That's supporting the business in the CX space, knowing that our audience is service management, it's IT support, right? It's people who are maybe on the solution side of IT support, or maybe leading a support contact center or leading an IT team. W- What do they need to understand that maybe they're not familiar with, or what would you share with them from a CX perspective? Just because there are so many different commonalities, I would love for you just to share thoughts on that last question before I wrap up our send off question.
Sure. Look, I genuinely think like and it probably this probably leads into your last question, to be honest.
That's
Um,
okay.
which is that for me, I can only speak from a personal perspective, having led thousands of people in contact centers. When you're running like a large operation with hundreds or thousands of people, the only time you're really thinking about IT is when something goes wrong, and or when you want a new toy to play with. They're pretty much it, right? When something go and sometimes when something goes wrong at a small scale, whether an agent or a group of agents like, oh, this isn't working, the common response is lodge a service desk ticket, and we know that it'll get solved. We know, and it's just one because there's so many things. You've got so many. You're spinning so many plates. You're juggling so many balls. You're not. It's just like that's one thing I can offload to IT, and they are a godsend when they are great. What I think needs to shift is that it's one team,
Mhm.
and the IT service desk, like there is, and this is the stuff I'm learning now, right? All of these upstream factors, these little things, whether it's the network, whether someone's on Wi-Fi at home and their Wi-Fi network's terrible, whether it's jitter, lag, all of these signals that are out there that IT are across and know about and live and breathe every single day, tie those back to the customer experience,
Mm.
tie that back to the fact that if you've got poor MOS values or poor jitter, that's actually going to affect your transcription, which is probably then going to affect your sentiment, which is probably then going to affect your CSAT, which is probably going to affect your NPS and all the other metrics that you're rolling up. Tell that story. Tell that story, because I tell you what, all of a sudden people are going to be like, "Whoa,
Wow.
we
Yeah.
need to get closer. We need to get closer," because and I think the other thing that we need to do is come up with maybe a bit more of a universal metric. So that universal metric might be a CX risk score, where you go like instead of you rolling up a CSAT score to your exec, like what does that actually mean? A bunch of your customers have said they're satisfied. Great. What if we were to roll up a metric like a customer risk score, a experience risk score that maybe takes all of those little metrics that we look at and mash them together to something that an exec team can go, okay, so our risk scores dropped. Why is that? Let's drill down, and give them an incentive to drill down as to why and fix those problems that, when you're not at that exec level, you're trying to fix because you know it's important, but you can't tell the story because you can't roll it up to
Yeah.
this beautiful metric that an exec's going to really nod their head at.
Oh man, yeah. Customer experience risk score. Like that, I would love to see that in action, because I'm thinking about change management, right? Organizational change management, and how you roll out technology and how you need to communicate with the business, and even XLAs, right? How you create an ambition you want to, measure on a sentiment, because you're getting feedback from people and all the indicators that go into that. But it's still, I think there's a place in all of this contact center technology support to ask the question, hey, what is the risk if we do this or if we don't? Not
Mm-hmm.
to the business, but to our customer trust, right? Maybe it's customer trust risk. Like, what do execs want to hear? I don't know. Experience sometimes makes them feel ishy, mishy, wishy washy. But maybe it's, that customer trust. And I don't know. I love it. I love that. Have you seen that in action, or is that just kind of an idea right now?
Oh, look, I've obviously with all the data I see, this
Yeah.
idea of the CX risk score and whether it's technology or whether it's experience, you can start to see that
Mm.
metric forming. Definitely,
I'd love to pick your
it's there.
brain.
It's there to be had.
Dude,
It's
I'd
there to be
love to pick
had.
your brain about that because there's things that I'm learning about like the XLA stack and how you basically calculate all in the back end. And I am not into math or numbers. And, when I get to the practitioner course, it's probably going to be one of the harder things I've done in my life because I hate numbers. But how would you calculate that? What goes into that? And maybe at some time when that becomes a fruition and you see it in reality somewhere. I'd love for you to be able to talk about that to our audience, but neither here nor there. Before I go down too many rabbit holes, let me ask you the final send off question. Uh, you hit rewind, right? AI lets you do that, and
Mhm.
there's no risk. What are the words of wisdom, words of advice you would give younger Luke?
Yeah. So when I started thinking about this and thinking about the audience that's probably listening to this, it ties back into what I was just saying, that there is a relationship to be had beyond just IT as a service provider. And it's one of those strange things, I think, particularly as a contact center leader, you're pigeonholed as a service provider. And so then when you get service providers like HR or IT, you then treat them the same way that you're treated. I did. And I wish I could go back and reframe that and be like, how do we create something that, because one of the things I've realized is that CX is greater than customer service. It's greater than it's a sum of all things combined. It is how you treat your people, and the HR plays a huge part in that. They're not the pure owner of it, but they're a huge part of that. IT, they don't 100% own the experience, but they're a huge part of it. And same as the contact center. And to be able to see that not in isolation, I would love to tell myself to think bigger, see bigger, and bring those parties together to work in harmony together, because ultimately it is for the betterment of what we're here to serve, and that is our customers and our people. And if we can serve both of those at the highest possible level, then all of those other friction points that happen along the way are much easier to solve.
Music to my ears, Luke. Well, thank you for being willing to give your time to this podcast, right? That does not have 300,000 views. And
It will.
for our audience, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they go check out 2020ish? Where
Yeah.
should we send them?
Look, we do have a website, which is 2020ish.com. So it's 20 as in the word, the 20 the number, and then the ish.com. And that's where you'll see 20ish CX leaders give their opinions on pretty random questions. So we've got a website. You can catch me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So reach out to me there. Otherwise, check out the channel on YouTube as well.
Awesome. Well, Luke, we appreciate you. And as you like to say when you wrap up things, number one.
Thank you, mate. So let me just give the audience a little bit of context on this one, because people ask me all the time. So my standard sign off is to say hooroo. And people are like, what is that? Well, it's an Aussie slang term, I suppose, but it's to say goodbye. But where it comes from is it derives from the word hooray. So we celebrate the conversation. And for me, particularly this conversation, I want to celebrate it because it's been really awesome. So until next time, hooroo.
Hooroo.